Hi, this is a so long tutorial for my pattern, the Ammy shirt. Ammy shirt is an oversized shirt that is designed with a lapel collar, puffy sleeves, and a back yoke to cover raw edges inside the garment. If you are interested with the Ammy shirt pattern, I've put the link to the pattern in the description box down below. So let's begin. After I cut and mark all the notches on the pattern, I went ahead to interface the cuffs, the front bodice facing, and only the under collar. Here I'm using a different color so you can easily see the process. Working with the collar, I place the upper collar on top of the under collar right side facing and stitch around the collar except for the neckline. Then I clip the pointy edge and the curved area for a smooth finish edge when turning the collar to the right side. Here, after I turn it, I will understitch the under collar as far as I can to make the under collar stay in place and not rolling out. Now I'm pressing the collar and baste the collar together at the neckline. Next, I'm going to assemble the back bodice. First, lay the back yoke like so, with right side facing up. Then, place the back bodice on top of it, right side to right side. Now, sandwich it with the yoke lining and place the lining wrong side facing you. Pin and stitch all 3 layers in place. Then press both yokes upwards. Now is to assemble the bodice panel. First, I fold the yoke lining out of the way. Then I pin the front bodice to the back bodice at the shoulder, right side together and stitch. Then I press the shoulder seam toward the back. Next is to add the collar. Working with right side of the bodice facing up, I place the collar on top of the bodice with the under collar at the bottom. Then I pin the collar from the center back neck to the side. Don't forget to match the notch at the neckline. And baste the collar ½ centimeter from the edge. Put aside the bodice panel for now. Here I'm working with the front bodice facing. I will finish the outer edge by folding the seam allowance 1 centimeter to the wrong side and press. This time working with the yoke lining, I pin and sew the front facing to the lining, right side together and stitch. Then press the shoulder seam toward the back. Now I will do a burrito method to join the back yoke lining into the bodice panel. First, place the right side of the yokes facing up. Then roll the back shirt toward the yoke seam. Now I lay the yoke lining on top of the main yoke and pin to align the neckline and the shoulder seam. At this point, the back shirt and the collar is sandwiched between the yokes. After pinning at the neckline, I continue pinning the front facing to the center front bodice and sew across the center front. Now I'm going to clip the curve around the neckline. Then I'm pulling the burrito right side out. It will end up to look like this from the inside. Now to finish the lining raw edge here, I will line up the lining on the shoulder seam and stitch in the ditch from the outside garment to keep the lining in place. create a clean folded lapel collar like so, I will do understitching at the center front. I mark 20 cm from the neckline down to the point X and clip at the point to divide the seam allowance like so. With one line of stitching, stitch the seam allowance to the center bodice, then move slightly to the side at point X and continue down to the hem. Do this like an understitching. Next, using a front seam, I'll join the front and the back bodice at the side. Lay the front bodice on top of the back, wrong side together, and stitch 1 cm from the edge. Press the seam allowance to one side and trim the seam allowance to 3 mm. Fold the fabric along the stitch line, enclosing the seam allowance and press. Stitch along the press edge with 1/2 cm seam allowance to encase the raw edges. Then press it toward the back. Now it's time to finish the shirt hem. With the right side together, stitch the facing to the front shirt 1.5 cm from the hem. Trim the corner and grade the facing seam allowance. Then flip to the other side. Our goal here is to roll the hem twice. I suggest you base the hem first by 1/2 cm. With the stitching line as a guide, fold and press the hem. When it comes to the curved part, slightly pull the basting stitch to make the hem fold easier and press to make it stay. Fold the second time to form a rolled hem, but don't stitch yet. Here I turn the facing right side out, then I edge stitch along the hem to keep it in place. Moving on to the sleeves, sew 2 lines of basting stitch at the sleeve cap between notches. Do this to all sleeves. Here I sew the inseam of the sleeves right side together and turn it right side out. I then gather the sleeves cap slightly and evenly by pulling one of the thread. Attach the sleeves to the bodice, I'm laying the shirt wrong side up and place the sleeves into the armhole with right side facing the shirt. And stitch around the armhole 1/2 cm from the edge. I stitch the sleeve lining the same way as before. Now to form puffy sleeves, we will attach the sleeves lining as a base. Working with the right side of the shirt facing up, open the armhole like so. Now I insert the sleeves lining into the armhole. Right side facing the bodice, so the shirt is sandwiched between the shell and the lining sleeves. Here what it looks like after. Then I remove all the basting stitch that's visible. For that, I will baste the sleeves hem half centimeter from the edge. I gather it to fit the sleeves lining hem. Then stitch them together as one layer. To make it easier for attaching the cuff to the sleeves, I press the cuff in a half toward the wrong side and press it nicely until it forms a folded line like so. Then I fold and press one side of the wrong edge by 1 centimeter toward the wrong side again. Now sew the short edge right side together and press the seam allowance open. Now place the unfolded edge on top of the sleeves right side together and stitch. Fold the cuff over, covering the raw edge of the sleeves hem, and top stitch from the right side to enclose the cuff band. Do the same for the other side. To make the facing stay in place, I will sew blind hem stitch by hand along the facing edge. Next, by following the mark on the pattern, I sew the buttonholes at one side and buttons at the other side. Now we are done. Hope you enjoy the whole process. See you again in the next video. Bye bye.